Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as you can tell, today we have such a special guest. I mean, the only word I feel you can describe this kind of career is iconic. The theatre work that this guest has done, the television and movie work they've done, and also delved into directing as well, which is awesome. And I cannot wait to start asking some of these questions. Today we are joined by Joanna Gleason. Joanna, how are you today?
I'm very well, Samuel. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm, as I said, sort of in the intro, I am just mesmerized by your career. You can scroll through the IMDb pages for like a visual effect and just the things you've done and how much you've been in. It's just mesmerizing.
It's interesting because there are times when I think to myself, oh, I could have done so much more, and then I stop to think about what I what I've been doing and what I have done, and I realize no, there's a nice chunky solid bit of work in there. But I think what I like most about looking back, because you can only look back, you can't predict what's going to come, is that it's so varied. It's been theater and television and motion pictures, and it's been writing and acting and directing, and it's been so that's me. I mean, I always had a hunger to do more than just what I started out doing, which was regional theater and local theater, and I've gotten to I am doing.
Yeah, I think that's the point with when you kind of scroll through, and I think that's something that really captures people. I've interviewed quite a few actors, and it's very divided traditionally between predominant theatre or television. But for you, it's very even.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm fascinated by, especially theatre work.
Well, but you also know that in order to sustain a life, and especially over a long period of time, it's very hard to sustain in just the theater, as you know. I mean, unless you're in Phantom for 36 years, you know what I mean? And kind of thing, a steady income. And if not, and then so television has been I've had some amazing opportunities to work with some extraordinary people in TV, but that's also where you get to go, oh, okay, we can keep going. We can keep our health insurance. We can buy a house. I mean, there's a lot to be said for television.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when you say you kind of feel like you wish you'd done a bit more, but I honestly do not know where you would have fit the time in to do more. Because
I
for
know.
almost about the 50-year career, it just feels like every year you had something on. It's crazy.
It does seem like that. And yet, when you know that the making of a motion picture takes maybe, 4 weeks out of if that, 3 weeks out of your life, and you think, well, she did a movie in 1996. You went, yeah, for 2 weeks, and then you think, well, what else did you do? So it's very piecemeal. It's totally a gig economy. You go from one job to the next if you're lucky. And I have been lucky.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess I'd love to really start with your early life. So what was kind of your early life before you kind of got into acting?
I knew from the time I was 10 years old that then I was in my first play in fifth grade, um, that I felt comfortable on stage. Samuel, my dad was in broadcasting. He started in radio and he ended up in television, Monty Hall, and it moved us from Toronto in Canada to Mount Vernon, New York, and then New Rochelle, New York, and then out to Los Angeles. And we moved so many times that really the only constant, in my young life was, of course, my family, but was the fact that there was always a place for me on stage. There was any play, any theater group, any musical group, that I could be part of. That to me felt as familiar to me as my family.
That's amazing. And I think I definitely find that I feel like with people when you're growing up, I mean, even as young as 10, and it could even be in your teens or even early 20s, I suppose. I definitely feel that I'm somebody that I tried a theatre play before when I was about 16, and it petrified me to no end. The concept of just knowing these people are staring at me, and to me, that was like super daunting. Did you ever kind of have that kind of feeling, or was it always just you were super calm and relaxed with it?
I was relaxed. I was relaxed with it because it was a way of not being my awkward, lonely, new kid in school. It was a way of being who I tell you I'm going to be, and that's the character. I'm going to be this person. You can all look at me all you want. You can't make any decisions about me because it's not Joanna. You know what I mean? It's a perfect hiding place for a young person. Um, it's inventive, yes. It brings a lot of what goes on in your subconscious to the work, but basically you are assigned a task. Play this role. You are part of a story. So when you get to be part of a story that isn't necessarily your personal story, it's very freeing.
Yeah, and I think that's with the younger sort of generation. I feel like it really helps you develop as a person. I feel like the one thing I took away from doing the very, very small local theatre that I did, the one play, is that it just kind of built this confidence in me to be able to talk publicly, talk to new people, kind of like, as you said, not feel closed in my shell. I feel like I could just kind of open up and just be free, and there's just that feeling that you just can't replicate anywhere else.
I know, and if you're a kid who, um, adults. I grew up in a time when my fabulous parents were not focused as the way parents are very kid centric now. It's very much, what are you feeling and what do you want to do and let's make this happen for you. It was do your homework, clean your room, we love you, we'll see you on the weekend. And and for me, it was when I went out on stage, it was a kind of attention, yes, but it was also attention for being smart, able to learn lines, able to do choreography, able to sing a song. And also it was also getting the grown-ups to have to be quiet, you know, and just watch the kids. And I think that was part of what it was. I mean, we're talking about, a long time ago in a different generation, a generational way of raising kids.
Yeah. So I guess it could even be when you started acting, really. Did you ever have like a show, a TV show, movie, or like maybe even an actor or somebody that kind of inspired you and somebody that you thought I'd love to replicate what they do?
Yes, and by the way, when you're young and there are actors that you admire, imitating them is not a bad way to start. You're never going to obliterate the memory of them, not when you're 12, or 15. But it is a good way. I was very, very taken with the movies of the 40s, 30s, and 40s, the black and white movies with the great Barbara Stanwicks and Betty Davis and Spencer Tracy and the character actors, Thelma Ritter and Walter Brennan, the ones who get dismissed as being just comic relief. They're not. They're brilliant actors. Betty Davis in All About Eve. The Song of Bernadette, which was a black and white movie with Jennifer Jones, which figures into the movie that I made, The Grotto, um, which I'm very excited about. We've won a lot of awards. So we'll get into that later. But I was influenced by, and young Teresa Wright. Oh my God, the best years of our lives. I mean, there are movies where the acting gets dismissed today as being what, broad or melodramatic. It's not true. Some of the acting in those movies at that time is more honest, more underplayed, more intelligent. It was an era when the actors went to the character to illustrate who the character is with the great directors and writers. We've entered an era now where all the actors, not all, please, many actors want to bring the character to them. So it resembles them more and what they want to do and their comfort zone and their relationship to the camera and their own vanity. And not everywhere, obviously, there's brilliant work being done, but you can start to spot the difference. And what I knew as a kid is that I want to take myself to a character. I don't want to play Joanna. I don't want to get up there and be me. Are you kidding? My God, no. If anybody really knew how horrible I was, the nightmare of feeling like you're special and nobody knows it, or you're not so special and everybody knows it. It's like that spinning coin. I wanted to play characters. I wanted to be part of something where I could get praise for disappearing and appearing as a character as written.
I love that outlook on things because, like you said, it's so refreshing to hear that. I always, I really try to instill in people that, again, 30s or 40s would be amazing as well. And I would love for people to kind of go back and give these old movies a chance and rewatch them and understand as well for that time period, which is a big factor as well. The hurdles they've had to go through as well to get those kind of roles, and then the fact that they bring these real characters to life, but you don't know them off
Right.
camera. You don't feel like they're playing themselves; they're playing the
Exactly.
character, and that's the biggest thing.
Exactly. And they were brave, and the women were brave in not always having to play sympathetic and adorable
Yeah.
all the time, which is what the American market wants, most of the time. I, yeah, I could go off on that. You might need the 3 hours of on this Zoom call, but the bravery of some of those roles and how just kind of gutsy and raw they were for that time. Also, there's something about black and white, which to me is less distracting and contemporary than than color. I mean, there's gorgeous work being done, obviously in Technicolor and has been for decades, but something about the black and white allows for your thinking to come forward, for your emotions not to be assaulted. You know what I mean? Your senses not to be assaulted. You really feel like you're a secret observer.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with black and white movies, because I do like to go back to watch some black and white movies every now and again. And I think with colored television, and it's funny because we're going into an era now where the bright, beautiful sort of colors and pictures we have now isn't enough, and that they want to go even more in depth, which I think would be more distracting.
Yeah,
But I think because you're not so distracted by everything around it, you really focus in on the minor details, and that's kind of why I feel like it just, I don't know, it resonates a little bit more than maybe some of what I guess modern stuff do now.
that's how I feel. I feel it's much more character driven and story driven than internal story driven than it is pyrotechnics and special effects. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, as you've mentioned previously as well, both of your parents were sort of heavily involved in the industry. What kind of influence did that have on you growing up? And was your parents being involved in the industry maybe not pushed you, but kind of swayed you more to go into the industry, or was it just something completely off your own device?
My God, any of us who have been in the theater uh, or in the entertainment industry, when we see an inkling of that in our kids or grandchildren, we go, "No, don't do it! By all means, no! It's going to be breaking your heart, and you'll never make a living." All those things. My dad was in television. My mom had been a model. She retired when she married dad and had me. They were very young, and later in her 50s, she went back to UCLA and got a master's degree in film and produced television movie, won an Emmy. She produced films into her 70s and 80s. I mean, my mom, though very much behind the scenes, into my dad was out there. He was quite well known for television and did a lot with it, did a lot of charity work with his fame. Never pushed me into it. We never really had the discussion. He would just come see me in plays, and say, "Oh, good job, oh, good job," that kind of thing. But it was my mom not wanting to relax into just having been in the arts. Her desire to stay creative and to stay a force, and she had to do it pretty much on her own. Apart from dad, there was really no nepotism. This whole nepo baby thing is just such bollocks. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You either have the talent or you don't. The opportunity may come to you, but if you're no good, you're no good. um it was my mom that was the greater. My dad could not have been prouder, but my mom led by example, and it's why I had the guts to write and direct a movie, because
Wow.
she believed in it. Yeah. I mean, my dad was always be like, um, well, why don't you take that show that they're offering you? I said, well, it's dad, it's a piece of crap. And they're not doing anything. Well, but you always should have, because he came from great scarcity. He came from really hard times. That's how he grew up. So the bird in the hand was worth everything. You take the job that's in front of you. And I had the luxury, because they did well, of being able to say, no, I really want to try to, you know, go over here where I can stretch myself challenge myself the way mom did.
I love that. I love the fact that I think, do you feel like both of your parents kind of having those different outlooks on that? Do you think that really helped you with your career?
You know what helped me is that whenever I called home for the last, I don't know, 50 years, or as long as until they both passed very close together. When I called home, all they wanted to hear was that I was happy. And it didn't matter what job, and it didn't matter if I didn't get this role or didn't get that one, or did this what. They just want to hear a happy kid, and it's what I tell all my students, and it's what I know as a parent and a grandparent. You just want to hear your kid on the other line be happy, no matter what they're doing. And if plan A isn't working out and they have plan B, make plan B plan A, and that's good enough too. You can't, you can die of your expectations here. And what my parents thought about anything I was doing, they never insinuated that into our relationship. They may have had private conversations about, oh, how could she have done that? Or why is she with this guy? Or, those kind of things. But career wise, they watched and they were proud and they were happy for me because I was happy.
Oh, that's so beautiful to hear. And I really, the thing I love about doing kind of these interviews, and especially with what you said about your parents, I love that the fact that I really like hope people who listen to this maybe have children that, although you can maybe have concerns or you can have that you could see sort of maybe the negative side of things that they want to do. I think it's super, super important for them to be really supportive of the choices that are made.
Yeah,
Because I know
you must know. I'm sorry, I just cut you off because you made me think of something. You know that when you're a kid, and I know this from our kids and our grandchildren, they can come to you for advice. That's one thing when they enlist your. But basically, if you have a response to what they say they're going to try or going, it can only sound like criticism. No matter how helpful you try to be, no
yeah.
matter words of wisdom, voice of experience, they're only going to hear why you think I can't do this, or why do you think I'm
Yeah.
stupid, or why. So you have to learn at some point a kind of benign, just if you see a red flag, you call out a red flag and just say, oh, this could be a red flag, but I think you'll handle it. But you have to be very careful because many kids who have not yet found both feet on the ground are easily pushed one way or the other. They are
Yeah.
by negative criticism, by ill-meaning friends, by people at auditions who are make you feel like crap. I mean, it's easy to topple a young artist. So I think the duty of a parent when their kid is, even if their child is not talented, you have to support them trying to
Yeah.
find that out for themselves.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny when you mentioned that? As soon as you were talking about that, about always seeing kind of the advice being criticism, I know that that was me when I was younger. I can hear that. I always remember when I said to my dad if I wanted to do something, even if it's something I'm not interested in now, but I wanted to do something different. And I always remember he said, get yourself a trade first. So you've always got something to fall back on. And now I look back thinking that's a really good advice because you never know what's going to happen in life. But back then I was like, do you think am I not supposed to do this? Is this not for
Exactly.
me?
Exactly. You can't win as a parent. You cannot win. So,
You can't.
yeah, yeah.
So I'd really love to go into your theatre career because it's something I really don't get to speak with a lot of guests about because a lot of them come from sort of film and TV.
Mhm.
Um, do you remember the first time you got casted in kind of like a professional production?
Yes. I I was actually researching questions for a game show as my day job. Uh, and I auditioned for, we have in Los Angeles, there was Los Angeles and Long Beach, two very big cities, had Civic Light Opera. The Civic Light Opera was always a kind of theater within a bigger unit of concerts and plays and stuff. But the Civic Light Operas put on shows, and the Long Beach Civic Light Opera was doing Promises, Promises, and they were doing Fiddler on the Roof. And I actually would drive down there. It was quite a drive, and I auditioned, and I got the lead in Promises, Promises. I had done one of the daughters in Fiddler on the Roof, but oh no, my very first, the thing of note, I got cast as the understudy to Ophelia, and I got to play a lady in waiting at the Mark Taper Forum, this beautiful theater in Los Angeles, when Stacy Keach was doing Hamlet. Okay, it had kind of an all-star cast. And I was one of the ladies in waiting, and an actress named Kitty Wynn was playing Ophelia. Well, Kitty had to leave the show with a week left to go because she was doing The Exorcist or the sequel to the whatever.
Mhm.
And they said to me, "You're going to take over as Ophelia." And I thought, I'm scared shitless. I know the role. The thing is, you get one rehearsal in the afternoon and you go on that night. So Kitty Wynn is very small. She's like 5 feet tall. And they had cut in the floor a grave for her to be buried in when Ophelia is dead. She's dead, she's drowned, she's wrapped in seaweed and gauze and everything. And grave diggers are carrying her body and they're going to lower her down into the, the bowels of the theater. And I am 5'8". And you know where this is going.
I
Right?
know exactly.
Yeah, you do. And so the only way they could cut, so one of the men carrying me, and it might have been Steve Nathan, whom I ended up working with years later, said, he kind of or something like this, "Bend your knees. Can you bend your knees?" So I'm a corpse and I'm trying to make myself just a little smaller so I don't fall off the edge of the stretcher and into the hole. That was one of my first professional. And actually an LA Times critic, Sylvie Drake, came and re-reviewed the show and gave me a lovely review as Ophelia. Yeah, that never happens, that they come back and re-review the show, because I was only on for a week. So there was that. There was the Civic Light Opera where I would do these musicals and then, eat a burrito on my way back home on the drive and try to take off my makeup and sleep and then go work, researching questions for a game show, and then get back in the car and eat another burrito as I changed and tried to put on pantyhose while I'm driving and get my makeup on and get to the theater and do the show at night. That craziness, I wouldn't trade for anything.
But I was going to say, you must sort of sit back and think now and think, how on earth did I do that night after night?
I was young.
Yeah.
I was young, and everything is possible.
Yeah, so it's almost like you said, the story you mentioned about the lead actress having to kind of, I suppose, pull out to go to another show. It kind of shows that maybe that role, that incident and that role was supposed to be there for you. It's almost like it was destiny for that to happen.
I'm a great believer that if you just look at your life in the rearview mirror, because you can't predict what's coming, but you can always see a pattern when you look back. So many things. The biggest one in my life being that the man who was hired to play a lead in this horrendous musical Nick and Nora that I did on Broadway, which you want to talk about, we can talk about it, but he, at the last minute before we started rehearsals, he was supposed to play a love interest for me. Barry Bostwick and I were Nick and Nora, based on the Thin Man movies of back in the 30s, great movies. He dropped out to do television, and in came an actor that I had never worked with, that I had only met briefly once, named Chris Sarandon, to play that role. And that was 1991, and we've been together ever since, because that was meant to be.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I need to mention this before in case I forget. I again, same with your husband as well. I am such mesmerized by the work he's done as well.
Oh.
It's incredible, and like you said, those kind of destiny moments are supposed to happen.
I do believe that. As well as, by the way, I believe there are roles that I auditioned very well for that I was not supposed to get. Because when I sit back and I look at the roles that I thought, gosh, I read so well and they didn't, I look at these women who play these roles and I think, it's so right that they got it. It's so, they are much better casting. And I do believe that casting has been fair to me, because there's a whole lot of stuff that I'm not right for, that even though people are glad to see me and, oh, will you come in and read? I don't have to do that anymore, but come in and read for us and do that. There are roles I am not supposed to get because there are actors better suited to it. And when you relax into that, and you realize you don't have to beat yourself up or grieve or rail against the heavens, you're going to get it or you're not.
Yeah, I love that outlook, and I think that's something that I hope a lot of people listening can kind of take that away from, that don't always feel super beat up and dejected that you didn't get a role. Maybe it's just not meant to be for you.
Not meant to be for you. Something else will come along. It's somebody else's turn to get that. And also the people hiring have something in mind. And frankly, you're either what they have in mind or you're not, no matter how good you are. It could be that you're not what they're looking for that day.
Absolutely, exactly. Throughout your whole career in theatre, it, I know it's a very it's going to be quite hard to whittle it down to maybe just one. Is there one that you kind of have the fondest memories of?
Really, it's hard to top the entire experience of Into the Woods. It's hard to top anything because this was Stephen Sondheim, and this was my return really to musicals after I had done one and moved back to California. I had done one on Broadway in the 70s and moved back and thought, will I ever get a chance to do another one? And this was that role at that time, with that cast, Chip Zien as the baker, and there's James Lapine and his immaculate book and direction. And and then everything that came with it. But Chip and I have been friends now, lo these many years, close friends, because we were part of that, extraordinary experience. Far and away, I think. And though I've had some fabulous times in shows with great companies and great roles and great fun stuff like the softball league, when we play on our days off in Central Park, or the Sunday brunches when we did a show. I did a show with Marlo Thomas and the late Ron Silver and Olympia Dukakis, and every Sunday before the matinee at 3, we would all meet down in the basement of the wardrobe room, and we would bring in theme brunches. There would be Hawaiian brunch, and somebody would bring bacon and sausages and eggs or pancakes or bagels and cream. That kind of thing happens in the theater. I have a lot of those memories, and how my son was when he was little, running around backstage with everybody taking care of him. I mean, those are hard to beat, um, from a part of a nice big part of my life in the theater. But in terms of a personal professional experience, Into the Woods, yes.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, you kind of mentioned those experiences you had behind the scenes. I mean, it just sounds like a family, right? Which is very hard to replicate in film and TV, I feel.
I agree.
And as you said, I think with Into the Woods, I mean, we have to talk about Stephen Sondheim
Mm.
because, in my opinion, and I think it's quite widely regarded as one of, if not the greatest composers and lyricists of all time.
Mm. I agree.
So, what was it like to get to spend time with him and get to work with him?
And I also got to spend some time with him, socially too, because we knew each other for so long. And he would come see, inevitably, he would see shows I was in, or we would have dinner, or I'd see a show of his and then go to his house, to have dinner afterwards. I realized that this is a real man with a real talent and such a brain. And I never had to go head to head with any kind of ego or temperament with him. And I would say most actors who've worked with him probably feel the same way. But speaking for myself, if there was an issue, we could talk about it. He was collaborative in that way. So was James Lapine. Everything to make you an easier trip from yourself to the character, not bring the character to you, but an easier path to finding who it is they have in mind. And they were incredibly open and very generous. And then what's great is that Steve would come see the show, 6 months later and still be overjoyed and happy and full of praise. And it was always that way. Um, I got to work with Stephen Sondheim. I mean, that's like a dream. It was a dream come true.
Yeah. And with the production of Into the Woods, do you remember how long you were performing that on a regular basis?
I did a workshop with everybody in 1986, I think. Uh, it was possibly 86 or 87. No, 86. Then we took it to San Diego to the Old Globe Theater, where we ran for a while, a few weeks. to polish it, to cut things, to have Steve finish writing music. Then it came back, and then there was a lag time when there were some cast changes, and he wanted to change some things in the score. And then we opened in November of '87, and I was with it through June of '88. So that was a good long chunk of time, but it ended up being a kind of a 2-year involvement with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's that is such a huge chunk of time, and the amount of hours you have to put in as well. And obviously, of course, with this movie, you won a Tony Award for the best actress in a musical, which you can find the video clip, and I'm going to link it to the top of the description of your award speech, which I love, and I love your reaction to it as well.
My reaction, you notice how I hurled my head back. I had whiplash for weeks after that, just from doing that. I hurt myself. Yes, that was quite a night. I did not expect it. I did not expect it. I was prepared for it, but I didn't expect it because things can go either way. But yeah, that was quite a night.
Yeah, I mean, I always know, obviously, when they're reading out the nominees, obviously, and they're listing each actor and their role. I always remember when they read your name out, there was a little bit more of a roar from the crowd than some of the others.
Oh, you can't hear anything. When they're reading an actor once said to me, be very careful, because in your daydreaming, you've heard them announce your name. So be very careful that they actually do announce your name, so you don't just stand up,
Yeah. So how did that, could you describe to us how that kind of felt when you actually sort of heard your name and that realization hit that you've won the award? Because obviously a lot of people here, have never experienced that before. So I'm very interested to know kind of how that actually felt for you.
I was thinking three things at the time. I was thinking, quite frankly, I wish I'd worn a better bra. I was thinking, I was thinking, don't, my legs feel very shaky right now. I'm shaking all over, so don't fall going up the steps. And the third thing I was thinking is, be sure to thank Chip Zien, because he was not nominated, and he's so beautiful as the baker in that show, and my mate, in that whole story. So once I did all that, I just kind of, spoke, and there was Angela Lansbury waiting in the wings, and there had
Yeah.
been Burnett and Joel Grey bringing it on stage, and I just thought, this is a moment.
Yeah. And then you had to nurse the whiplash days later.
And what did I do to myself? Yeah.
Throughout your theatre career, obviously with a lot of musicals, there's a lot of clips of you singing. Was music a big influence for you sort of prior to doing musicals, or is that kind of influence purely for the role itself?
I was I was only partially trained as a singer. I mean, I sang in madrigal singer groups in high school, little kind of singing music from the 1500s, which of course isn't that what you want to do when you're 15 or 16, but it was great. And we toured with them, and it was tight harmony, and I loved it. And I loved being part of a group. I never really had particularly great confidence in my singing alone. Never did. Was not encouraged to sing at home, wasn't discouraged, but was not encouraged. I was very self-conscious about it, incredibly self-conscious about it, as I am to a certain extent to this day. But somehow I did these musicals at Civic Light Opera, and I found my pocket. I found my pocket. I'm not a big belter, and I don't have a big soprano voice, but I have a storytelling voice. And it was, and even when I listening to old songs of me singing in past shows, I think it's lovely. You can relax, Joanna. You know what I mean? And and I've struggled with a kind of image of myself as a singer, kind of feeling like I could have worked at it harder. I did have some training, spotty training here and there with some great teachers. And when I do my own solo show, which I've done a few times and traveled around with it, I I feel really good singing, but there are times when I just think, I if I'm anything, I feel like I'm a crooner. Like there used to be crooners, do you know what I mean? I'd like to just kind of sit, in some sort of smoky little nightclub and sit on a stool with a guy with a guitar and just croon some songs. But the obligation is, well, you have to tell a story and it has to be varied and you have to, do all this kind of stuff. So I can step up when I need to, but I was not a born singer, to answer your question. Didn't feel that that was me.
Oh no, that's fair. That's fair enough. And like you said, it's completely different when you're if you were to do a solo tour singing, as you said, on your own in a smaller nightclub, sort of a cappella or maybe just with a guitarist, it's totally different to having to actually belt out songs for musicals.
Yeah, and
So I can
emphasis
kind of
is on,
understand.
yeah, you see what's happened with in the last few decades with the belting, with the emphasis on the, the big, huge notes and the, the high modulations and all that kind of stuff, and it becomes a gymnastic event. There are some fantastic voices who can do it, and it's great, and it's fantastic. But who are you when the story has to get close to you? Who are you in the quieter moments where I can actually hear you thinking instead of just hearing you sing?
Right, exactly. One last question I kind of have for the theatre side of this. Obviously, you've done a lot of work in the California side, as well as a lot of Broadway, sort of New York side. For you, how do they kind of compare? Are they quite similar or totally different?
In New York, to get to the theater, I would either walk or take the subway or take the bus in bad weather and freezing weather or boiling summer or subways that had no air conditioning, and you get into your dressing room and you go, okay, let's do the show. In California, I would get into my car, turn the air conditioning on or turn the heater on, and drive and park and no trouble and get into my dressing room and think, I haven't struggled. Where's the struggle that kind of like winds you up, and it's something too relaxed about it. I got to do some lovely theater in Los Angeles, and there are some beautiful theaters, particularly the small theaters, where I got to do some stuff that I really, really loved. But just the feeling in New York is you have to kind of overcome stuff and just the onslaught of everything in the city. I was walking around London when we were there a couple of weeks ago, and I went to see Bernadette in the Sondheim in Old Friends, which was just wonderful and so great to see her afterwards. But then we saw Operation Mincemeat, and I was walking from theater to theater, and I was thinking, oh, I get this. I'd have my coat on and my boots because it's cold, and I got to worry about the voice. I'll put the scarf around here, and I'll get to the dressing room, and there will be the humidifier and my nice hot cup of tea, and I would do a show. And I thought, I miss that. I miss the element of, you know, you have to have your day, and then you bring
Yeah.
yourself to the theater to tell a story, a wind up. I just call it a nice kind of like warm up wind up.
Yeah, that's something that I obviously somebody that's not been worked in the industry. If I think about musical theatres, the first thought in my mind is just New York. And like you said, you have that feeling of like the struggle to just get to the venue, and then you've got to prep for your day. That's always the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
Um,
fantastic. And
yeah.
when I was young, we could go out afterwards and have a burger and have a beer and do all that. I mean, it's different now. The last show I did, I just remember having to live like I was some sort of orchid, like you put me in a nice quiet place and you spritz it with a little water and no, I can't talk on the phone. And, no, I can't meet you in a restaurant where everybody's screaming. And, it's a whole different deal now, which gives one pause if I think about, will I do another play? I'm sort of asked all the time, will I do another show? There are things to think about.
It'll just be kind of replanning it, isn't it, and doing it differently. But it would be so amazing to see you do another play.
Thank you. I would like to do another play, not a musical. The musicals these days,
Yeah,
the great exception was I saw a show. I had done a show for David Yazbek, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but he wrote The Band's Visit, and The Band's Visit, I don't know if it's come to London.
don't think so.
Based on a movie. Oh my God, it's a quiet, brilliant, beautiful show, full of humor, full of heart, and glorious music. And that scale of a show, I could see myself doing as a musical, but I'm more interested in finding a good role in a new play. And it doesn't have to be Broadway at all. It could be off Broadway.
Oh, awesome. We'll have to keep an eye out for that because I'd love to see. I hope I see an announcement at some point for a role that comes your way.
Thank you. I'd love to
Um,
work in London. I would really love to come to London.
oh, if you ever come to London, I will be there 100%. Big venue, small venue, it doesn't matter.
Okay, that's a promise.
I really want to briefly talk to you about your movie and TV career as well, because I mean that it's just as extensive as your theatre work, which is incredible. But there's two, there's one area, I suppose, two movies that I'd really specifically love to talk to you about. Um, is you both, I suppose, both movies you worked in with Woody Allen.
Mhm,
I mean, you were in Crimes and Misdemeanors as well as Hannah and Her Sisters, which
mhm.
again, if you kind of look at Woody Allen's career, I mean, he's had some unbelievable movies he's directed, um, spanning even back into the 70s all the way to today. Even still now, he's bringing out movies sort of more recently. Um, Crime and Misdemeanors and Hannah and Her Sisters are always heavily ranked as like two of the top five movies he's ever directed. Um, how does that feel for you, knowing you were kind of part of those movies?
Uh, Thrilling. Hannah and Her Sisters, though it was one scene, was the first major motion picture I was ever in, and the experience. Everybody could not have been sweeter. You know, Mia and Tony
Mm.
Roberts. Um, and basically, the audition process was being told by uh, Juliet Taylor, the casting director, Woody would like to meet you. And so he had an office on Park Avenue down in the 60s somewhere. And I was in the waiting room and I was nervous. I think, what am I going to talk about? What is he? I didn't have a script. They don't show you a script. I mean, I don't know what to say. Do I have a funny story? No, that's too forced. Don't do that. And he's Woody Allen. He's funnier than you are anyway. And I'm sitting in and he calls me in and I come in and he says, hi. And I shake his hand. He goes, thank you for coming in. Very nice to meet you. And that was it. And when I did Crimes and Misdemeanors, I went back. He opened the door. He went, hi, shakes my hand. Great to see you again. Thanks for coming in. And that was that because they know what they have in mind. So I was what he had in mind. And thankfully, Juliet put me in front of him. And the shooting on the set it's effortless. I mean, you do the scene, there's very little notes, very few takes, very little discussion, and then you go home. You know, it's that he knows if the script is solid and he knows what he wants and he's got brilliant cameramen, you know, Dick Mingalone and others, but he Sven Nykvist, the great Sven Nykvist, you just show up and you do what is on the page. You know, he cast you for a reason. Just do that thing. And if he wants another one, and then at one point he said to me, "Do you want to do another one?" I went, "No." Anything you need? He went, "No." And you go home. Now that's pretty because he's a well-oiled machine. That you know his whole crew had been with him for years and years and years, and
Mhm.
so you kind of know because he has such a body of work. You kind of know what the feeling is going to be. You kind of know his point of view and what the tone is, and it's on the page. And yeah, you do your work and you go home.
With either of the movies, because as you said, with Hannah and Her Sisters was your first big motion capture movie. Uh, was there any, whether it's from actors, whether it's from directing, script writing, in general, were there any kind of lessons you feel like looking back now that you learned there that you kind of carried with you throughout your career?
In two ways. One, which came later, was the director on the set. Woody, watching Woody as a director for when I got to do it. But the other was since I was new to this, and I also, as a young actor, got to work with some really legendary people in the theater. Be quiet, watch what they do, watch how they handle themselves, watch how they are between takes, watch, listen, watch how they listen to each other. You know what I mean? You learn by observing. You can't come in with any like I'm going to do it this way. You just learn by observing and how you fit into that story. And I got to watch some splendid people.
Amazing. Did you feel, I know obviously there was you know, the cast is star-studded in both movies, as well as obviously having Woody directing it. Did you kind of get a feeling that with both of them, that when they were being filmed, you just kind of felt like whether this is going to be amazingly received, but this is going to become one of a very iconic movie, especially from the 80s?
Uh, the reason why the answer is yes is because there's already kind of a shelf of Woody Allen films
Yeah.
where you know that this is going to be another volume, and then yet again this is going to be another volume. And plus, I was never in a big enough part to get the whole script to read, but you could just tell that with this many good people on board, they wouldn't have said yes if the script was not good. And you know yeah, I had the feeling you're in a Woody Allen movie. I mean, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's, I love those kind of ideas of like people that get I mean, if you look at just those two movies alone, being in a Woody Allen movie, and then on top of that you were in a Stephen Sondheim sort of composed theatre role, they're like two of the biggest icons in each industry, and you've kind of had the opportunity to work with both.
yes.
Very
And
few people can say that.
well, and to toot my own horn, on those days when I feel I haven't done enough, I was directed by Mike Nichols in both a movie and a play, and in a musical written by Arthur Lawrence and Charles Strauss, who wrote Annie. And I mean, so yeah. And in television, for Aaron Sorkin, I worked for him twice. It's just like at Paul Thomas Anderson, I did a movie for him. Yeah, girl, calm down.
Yeah, you need to big yourself up a bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
um well, I remember, and this is a bit kind of off off the script for the plans that I had with the questions. My family always asks kind of what guests I have coming on the show, and when I mentioned them to you, the first thing they said was, "Wasn't she in Friends?" And I was like, "Yes." Like,
Yeah.
and then because then we would look back and we couldn't believe you were only in 2 episodes, because it just felt like your
Yes.
character Kim had just been in for so long.
I get a lot of, I'm on Cameo, which is this thing where you request a celebrity to make a personalized video for you. And often they say, "Oh, well, we loved you on Friends." I went, "Oh my God, I was in 2 episodes." But that show is an international, you know, it's just everywhere. And in fact, I have a cameo to do when I leave you for a young woman who I think is in Eastern Europe who saw me on Friends. And that's, yeah, yeah. I had a good Yeah, I had a good time with them. They were lovely people.
Yeah, I mean, with Friends, it's like you said, it's not only did it go very much worldwide. I mean, you can go to anyone in any country and they've seen it. But I mean, some people genuinely believe like it's their favorite show of all time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a show that offered a certain generation, and over time, you could navigate your own life a little bit by checking in with the character you feel was more like, like your, your avatar, I guess. Were you a Rachel? Were you a Ross? Were you a Monica? And you kind of see, well, how are they doing it? And well, they did it, so maybe I can. And in a way, that's how influential television has become. Now, unfortunately, it's been replaced by short bursts of, meism on TikTok and all these things where you go, honey, you're not living a life. You're not actually doing any work. You're not working for something. And that everything gets passed off as creative, which is when it isn't, or written, which it isn't, or can you do it 5 days a week? Can you do it for a year and a half on Broadway? You know what I mean? We've really become so small. We've become small in our attention spans and in our foot stomping adolescence of what we want when we want it. And we're losing empathy, and we're losing education, and we're losing wisdom, and we're losing a whole lot of things that makes me sad at this age to see. But there are great pockets of I teach a lot, and there are young people who really are open, and they want to learn, and they don't think that the world started just with the day they were born. They want to watch the old movies from the 30s and 40s. They want to learn their craft. They want to learn from others. You know what I mean? They want to try and fail, which is brilliant. And those are the kids I'm drawn to, and there are a lot of them.
You know, I feel like I need to thank you for kind of saying that, because I can't, I could not agree with you more. That with the generations now, there is a generation of everything's got to be quick and now, and I can't, I nothing puts me off more than that kind of content. And as you said, everything's passed as like well, like content, and there is no story behind it, there is no writing behind it, and people don't want to learn from the people that came before them. And as you said as well, they people are so afraid to make a mistake that
Yes. That
it's
they'll push
just
that they'll push forward what is wrong or untrue in order not to admit that they've gotten something wrong or that they don't know something. But the other thing that's happened, Samuel, and this is the thing that really breaks my heart. There's a generation that has completely cheapened the words "I'm sorry" because they don't know how to apologize, because they never feel they have to. They don't know how to, and that's not just an emoji, you know what I mean? Or it's not just, or it's not sorry. They don't know how to say, I am so sorry that I did that to you. And they don't know really how to say, I love you. And they don't know how to do it in person and mean it, friend to friend. I'm not talking about romance. I'm talking about, I have friends. I love my friends. My friends, male and female, we say to each other, I love you. We say it all the time because we know we mean it. It's not just love ya, you know, that kind of thing.
yeah,
So, but it's really the I'm sorry. It's the unapologetic nature of people who don't know what they're talking about, who push bullshit on you, who outright lie, who are mean and never apologize, and who are feel entitled when they haven't earned it, and they never, when they're called out on it, you become somehow the enemy, and they never say I'm sorry. That's sad. That's really sad.
yeah. I think that the age of heavily, I suppose, mobile devices and the internet has definitely desensitized people from words and actions, and then
Yeah.
they don't know how, like you said, I even associate it with back, you know, back if you had to speak to somebody that lived far away, if you wrote a letter, that letter and you writing it just meant so much more meaningful than sending a text. But sending a text, you could just emotionally detached, I suppose,
That
because it's just quick and easy to do.
it's quick and easy, and writing a letter, you know, writing a letter, when I would get a letter from somebody, it just made my heart sing. You know, it was just, it's that care and that time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm really hoping, and I have faith, uh, to a degree, I suppose, that
Mhm.
we'll eventually we'll kind of usher out of this era that we're kind of in, and I hope that people kind of start to learn from people that pre-succeeded them, and we can kind of go back to actually being leveled humans again, and not like like emotionally detached robots, I kind of suppose.
You know what would be lovely is to just start a kind of grassroots campaign of letter writing and saying, you know, you want to make somebody's day, write them a letter.
Yeah, for
Put a
sure.
stamp, put a stamp on it, mail it, you know, and watch what happens when they get a letter from you that says nothing more than I'm just thinking about you, or how'd that thing go, or I just want you to know I miss you. And you know, we can text all the time and all we want, but this is me taking 10 minutes of my day, 10 minutes, to write something to you, put a stamp on it, take it to the mailbox, and let you know that I care.
Yeah, exactly. I really hope, I think that'd be a lovely thing to kind of to push out there, that kind of message to promote, which would be amazing. Um, I really want to quickly, because I know obviously you're very busy. I want to very briefly talk to you about your directing career, which kind of took a big turn last year with the
Yeah.
Grotto. Can you kind of talk to us a bit about the Grotto and kind of what inspired you to go into directing?
I I've I've always been told I would make a great director, and I've been told this by, and here I am, I'm going to drop a name of somebody who's dead, so you can't fact. But Mike Nichols told me while we were working on The Real Thing, I was a standby for both lead women in The Real Thing, and I actually got to go on in both roles eventually. But I would sit next to Mike as he was putting together. He was bringing in a new cast after Jeremy and Glenn Close and Christine Baranski, and I was going to understudy both these women. Um, And he turned to me once because I gave him an idea, and he said, you really should be directing. And of course, like a child, all I heard was, because you shouldn't be acting. You know what I mean? I told you, we can't hear anything from anybody in authority. So, but I took it to heart, and I did a sitcom on CBS called Love and War, and it was created by, and many of them written by Diane English, who has remained a very dear friend. And Diane said to me, because I said to her, I'm interested in directing. She said, come to the editing room. I'll show you how it's put together. And I sat and I saw what cameras need to see and where the cameras were. And she gave me an episode of Love and War to direct. And she gave me 3 episodes of another sitcom that she had an order for 6 with Louis Anderson. She said, you can direct 3 of them. And I thought, this is the first person who's sort of stepped up and made this happen for me. So that gave me a great deal of confidence. And I directed an Oh Baby, a Lifetime series I was on, and had it run longer, I would have directed one of the Bette Midler ones, but it died a slow and agonizing death. But in terms of the movie, I wrote The Grotto many years ago, and I wrote it about a woman who at 40 looks around her life and realizes that she has absolutely nothing of any permanence. Her fiance, in my case, my marriage had crumbled. She had at that time, I did, but she had no kids. Her job was ending. She had no money. She had made nothing but mistakes in her life, trying to please everybody and nothing for herself. And she finds that she inherits half interest when her fiance dies unexpectedly. He's left her half interest in what was formerly a gay nightclub, but a failing restaurant way out in the desert, Joshua Tree, California. And she doesn't know why. She's never been there. And then as the movie unfolds, characters from this world and some others start to come into her life and show her to be who she really is. She sees herself reflected back to herself in a way that starts to feel like they see her better than she has seen herself. There's live music in this movie. There's a lot of comedy, but there's also a kind of heartache and a wonderful kind of trajectory of grief that pays off into something transformational at the end. There's a little bit of plausible magic and spirituality in it, but it's based on the movie, not based on, I told you, I referenced the movie The Song of Bernadette, this movie with Jennifer Jones from back in the day. It was about a young girl, true story, of a young French peasant girl who, in a garbage dump in a town in France, saw a vision of the Virgin Mary speak to her. Everybody thought she was nuts. There's nothing there. It's a garbage dump. And the vision told her, you have to dig in the dirt, dig in the dirt, dig in the dirt, dig in the dirt. There'll be water. It's a garbage dump. She digs in the dirt. What do you know? Water comes up where there was never water, and people, the blind can now see, and the crutches are thrown away. And to this day, you can Google Lourdes. This was Lourdes, Lourdes, France. You can live stream it and still see the candles and the grotto and people coming to get the water and all that. So I thought, what if there was a nightclub in the desert called the Grotto, where, let's say, the gay community in the 80s and 90s would come because it was a hard time and they needed miracles and they needed healing and they needed just a place to eat and to be with each other. And that's what it started out to be. And when she inherits it, the fountain where the water is has run dry with the styrofoam rocks, and the Virgin Mary statue is just standing there kind of aging, and there's no patrons, the place is going under, and miracles start to happen. Because the faith is not in the statue. The faith is in each other. And it's everybody's faith in her that starts to make miracles at the Grotto. So I had this movie. I showed it around to a couple of people. One producer and one very big star wanted to take it and run with it. But I said, no, I want to direct it. And they went, yeah, pat, pat, pat. Yes, yes. Now, middle-aged to old woman, who's never directed a feature film. Yes, that's lovely, dear. Go sit over there. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. Thank you for your interest. I'll keep moving with it. And then my friend Todd Schatz and his partner Tim Kirkman read it and said, we want to produce it. We want to help you find the money. And they started making a prospectus and an outreach. And a couple of years went by. I made a short film to see what it's like, get together a DP that I love and some cast members who live up here in Connecticut and in 2.5 days, we made a beautiful short film that played at the Cambridge Festival in England. And then a woman moved down. You talk about things that are meant to be, Samuel. I met a woman who lives up the street from me, who's part of the Tribeca Film Festival. We became pals. She said, you know, another interesting woman, she's produced a movie, has moved 2 miles down the road from you. You want to meet her? I mean, maybe you can talk to her about the Grotto. She produces movies now. She's, you know, she's just moved in. She's got the place down the thing. So we got together. Now, this was in uh, early 2020. And we met for coffee. I did not bring up the Grotto. I wanted to see who she was. I wanted her to get to know me. You know, you don't just say, here's a script. Your new neighbor. Let's be pals. And she was lovely and smart and all this kind of stuff. And I said, good, let's go. I can't wait for us to get together again. Boom, pandemic. Boom, nobody's talking to anybody. Her husband got sick. He's fine. And this person got sick. And now we're all staying, we're all doing, you know, cleaning our own shelves and washing our mail and all the fear and sadness and losing people. And that's 2020. And then in 2021, we had been vaccinated, and I wrote her and I said, hey, how are you all doing? Is your production company accepting submissions to, I have a script. She said, send it to me, of course. I sent it to her on a Tuesday. She said, what are you doing Friday? I read it. I love it. And so she came over Friday. We talked and talked, and she said, I'm in. And she produced the whole movie. Now, she lives down the road from me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have met her had I not met Nancy up the road. You know what I mean? Whom I wouldn't have met if it weren't for Caroline Aaron, the actress whom I know, my dear, dear friend who said, you got to meet my cousin because he knows Nat. You know, it's this whole kind of beautiful tapestry of threads that come together. And so she said, I'm in, and we mobilized very quickly, and shot it in September, October of 2021 during COVID with COVID protocols. Nobody got sick. Not at all. We had all the protocols in place. Everybody felt safe. We were able to take our masks off and eat together and laugh together and have a great time. And, you know, somebody on social media the other day said to me, oh yeah, you people, the masks don't work. It's been proven. And I thought, you know what? There's just no cure for stupid. And I tell you, what can I tell you? Okay, you do you. And then, you know, click, I'm off social media. So this is about the fact that a lot of things came together with a lot of people paying attention, a beautiful cast. The movie has played 8 festivals. We won Best Narrative Feature premiere at the Heartland, a big festival. I got a screenwriting award at another festival. We won the jury prize at another festival. It's played in every region of the United States. And now I'm waiting to hear, I think there's a distributor who's going to pick it up. So I'll be able to say to people, now streaming on such and such, you know what I mean? So that's good. And I'm on to the second film, which is very different, that we're going to try to get produced next year.
You know, we spoke about this briefly. I love nothing more than these stories of things that just kind of happen for no apparent reason, and every piece just kind of falls perfectly into place.
Yeah.
But what the thing I love about this the most is, I know a lot of people that direct and screenwrite their own movies. You know, they enjoy doing it, but I love how passionate you are about this and how in depth you've gone about this. And I've read the synopsis of the movie, and just by reading that short paragraph, immediately just sort of pulled me in, and I love the gist and the story by it.
Here's a one-time offer for you. I don't not particularly for everybody listening, but if you would like to see the Grotto, I can send you a link and you can watch it. And then if you want to talk about
please.
I need your email, which you'll tell me after you stop recording. And I will send you a Vimeo link and you can watch it. I have had the great pleasure of seeing it in real theaters with the real sound system and the real big screen. And I have to tell you, my feelings about it changed because I'd only been editing it and watching it on a small computer screen, you know, and you just think, oh, I wish I'd done this different. I don't know, does that? Most of the people listening and most of the people who will eventually see it will not be seeing it in a big theater.
Yeah, you know, it's such a shame that happens. And I think the sad reality is, I'm not sure necessarily about the States, but certainly over here, the theaters are just slowly closing one by one, and it's one of the most like gut-wrenching feelings ever, because I love nothing more than seeing a beautiful movie on a big screen, and I love the immersive like other people around, and it just makes you kind of feel like you're sort of watching something special. But yeah, I was reading about the movie, and I was so gutted because I tried to find it as hard as I could, but we couldn't get it over here.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, I will send
Awesome.
it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And like I said, as soon as it gets announced, if a distributor and people can watch it, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to spread this so people get to watch it, because I'm
Thank you.
really excited about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Um, one last question I have for you, Joanna, and it doesn't have to be about acting or theatre work. It could just be about life, anything. Maybe if it's a piece of advice you had, if you could give people listening and watching this one piece of advice, what would that be?
One. Um, we live in a world where it seems you always have to have an answer when there's a question. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to answer right away, that you might want to investigate and find out a lot of different possible answers, not a lot of different possible truths, because the word truth and fact have become completely co-opted by other forces. But go at the world with a gentleness. It's a very tough world right now. It's a cruel world right now, where there are forces that cannot be stopped, that are doing nothing but hideous damage everywhere, my country included. And nobody puts a very high premium on kindness or listening or empathy or diplomacy or the truth. So if you find yourself the object of something unpleasant, let it go through you. Don't react right away. Let it go through you. Say to yourself, where is this coming from in the other person? What is their life? I can't possibly know their life or their circumstances. And by the way, they can't really possibly know all of mine. We assume so much about each other. We just make these assumptions, these decide at a glance. Yeah, oh yeah, I get who that, and it's lazy. It's lazy is what it is. So it takes a little work to be a human being, but the payoff is connection. The payoff is growth and empathy and a kind of blossoming. You can still blossom in this rocky terrain, but you have to do it by being kind to each other, by really doing for others. My dad, his whole credo of his life, when he had nothing to when he had something, was you must do for other people, because it will fill you with a happiness that nothing else can bring you. And he was right. And so those are my words of whatever.
Joanna, it has been one of the biggest honors of me doing these interviews to have you on the show today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for taking time out of your day.
Pleasure. This was an absolute pleasure, and we could have gone on for 3 hours. So I thank you.
We really could have. I was I was very curious of the time. I didn't, because I do get very guilty of asking questions and losing track of the time.
That's lovely. So I want to thank all your listeners too, and I hope that they support you and stay with you, and that you prosper in this field, because you're really great at it. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you so
having me on.
much.